Hey everyone, CW Music here. I'm CWD, and this is going to be a music review of the latest N.E.R.D album, No One Ever Really Dies. N.E.R.D are the funk and hip-hop collective group fronted by singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist Pharrell Williams. A lot of people mostly know Pharrell for having more of a solo career, appearing on features, having that happy song. But unbeknownst to many casual music listeners, Pharrell was also one of the key figures in this band we have here, N.E.R.D. N.E.R.D have been around since the early to mid 2000s, putting out quite a few albums in the past in this funk and hip-hop type vein. Pharrell, as a rapper, as sort of a spoken word sort of sense, is underrated in terms of what most people know him for at this point in his career. Can't say I have ever listened to an entire N.E.R.D record from beginning to end, but whenever a rapper would guide on an instrumental, I would always hear people say that, oh yeah, this sounds similar to what N.E.R.D's done. Oh, this is definitely N.E.R.D influenced. And I would always ask myself, okay, but what exactly does N.E.R.D sound like? And now that N.E.R.D have came out of this supposed hiatus, I assume, since this is their first album that they dropped, or at least at the time, this is their first album that they dropped since 2010, I can now definitely understand what people were talking about when they talk about the sound of N.E.R.D. With this album, though, I do think that in comparison to what I've heard from their previous projects, I can definitely say that this is their most refreshing, and a lot of people will agree with me on this, their best album in a while. This album is 51 minutes long. It's about 11 tracks, so pretty lengthy, but the weird thing about this album is that it doesn't feel like it's actually 51 minutes long. If anything, it feels more like it's a standard 38 or 41 minutes in length. A major culprit to the album being as lengthy as it is being the song Lightning Fire Magic Prayer, which is about 8 minutes in length. To get this out of the way, it's actually my least favorite track on the record. Now, what this instrumental does is akin to what most, if not all, of the instrumentals are doing, sort of a intricate, at times trippy and bass-driven sound. But there's not a whole lot that this track does that sticks out in comparison to what all the other tracks do. Add to that, it's not really doing a whole lot that justifies it being about 8 minutes in length. Apart from that, the instrumentals and production on this album are pretty great. Lots of formidable bass, the grooves on tracks like Voila and Lemon, as well as moments of kites and especially Rollinem 7s, are definitely driving, and they keep you on your toes as you're listening to it, even if at times it can get pretty repetitive. Think of this one album as like this awesome rave set that everyone is pretty much entrapped in and enjoying, yet simultaneously they're also woke to the political and social atrocities and whatnot that are occurring in the world. This is pretty much what this album is, and I think what they do with this style is definitely well executed. Take the opening track Lemon, for example. The beat is definitely hard-hitting, it's definitely formidable. I do like the little plinkly percussion that's kind of sprinkled all across the track. The bass is definitely present, at times omnipresent, which it's definitely mixed well in that regard. Bass is pretty much N.E.R.D's best friend with a good deal of these tracks, and what I dig about that is how well mixed and well produced the bass is on these tracks. Simultaneously, the vocals have definitely a lot of presence and are up front and center pretty much all throughout the entire album. A track like Voila has these stuttering and driving guitar chords all throughout as Gucci Mane is guiding on the hook, and God, they built this hook specifically for Gucci Mane. I love it. They think I'm a magician. They think I know magic. They think I go abracadabra, then come back as something different. There's also definitely tracks on this album that feature quite a bit of dynamics and progression for sure. A track like Don't Do It, which features the best Kendrick Lamar verse on this album. There's 2 of them. The track starts out pretty low-key and definitely ballad-like before it just keeps building and building in both tempo and sound before it just kind of climaxes in glorious fashion. Deep Down Body Thirst pretty much does something similar to this, except it's more of a soft, loud, soft dynamic with what they're doing, and it definitely is executed pretty well. There's also tracks that are kind of repetitive, but certainly still maintain a great atmosphere all throughout. The sort of funk and kind of entrancing vibe to it. A track like ESP, which is about the desensitization of the human race and how much potential that they're wasting. This song actually reminds me of what Anderson .Paak would do if he did another single with a producer like N.E.R.D or something, and I absolutely love it. And the track Rollinem 7s is mostly repetitive, but there's a nice bridge, and after that there's an Andre 3000 guest feature that makes the repetitiveness pretty worth it as you're trying to get through the 5 minutes the track goes along for. As far as guest features goes, one thing I do gotta commend about this album for sure is how well implemented all the guests are. All of them. Even some artists that I don't really care all that much for. Take the opening track, Lemon. Rihanna is rapping on this track. Rapping. And it actually goes well without a hitch. It makes me wonder what an entire project with Rihanna rapping would sound like versus her doing her singing thing. As mentioned, Gucci Mane does well on the hook, and there's like this instrumental break in the track Voila that features some steel drum that is kind of Nigerian, which would make sense given the fact that Wale has a guest feature on this track, and he definitely does pretty well. I love his line where he says that they say that money talks, but can I pay you for the muzzle? Future works considerably well over the track 1000, even though the auto-tune that on his voice isn't really all that great. I mean, if you've watched my channel before, you guys know that I really don't like Future, but if you can make a song where Future is not just tolerable but enjoyable on a track, then you succeeded. Kendrick Lamar has a fiery verse on Don't Do It, which is about police brutality. The song being sort of about, yeah, you can just go ahead and throw your hands up, you can go ahead and plead for your life, but they're gonna do it anyway. And Kendrick spits this fiery verse that definitely exemplifies a lot of political awareness in terms of the police brutality that is going on in America. Different decade, same law. Andre 3000 definitely does his thing. Kendrick has another verse on the track Kites, and MIA has a really great verse on this track. It makes me kind of interested in what MIA could be doing on another album if she was to drop another one at some point in her existence. With the closing track, Lifting You, beautifully crafted song that's kind of a nice somber ballad. It has Ed Sheeran on it, and I'm not really that big of an Ed Sheeran fan, but his implementation is pretty well executed as well, even though the hook is kind of redundant given the fact that Pharrell is capable of the kind of vocal inflection that Ed's doing, but still, it's definitely a highlight for me. So not really anything too major about this album that I dislike. Didn't care all that much for Lighting Fire Magic Prayer, considering the fact it's a little too long. And the track Secret Life of Tigers, yeah, the bass is trump knocking, and I do like how erratic Pharrell gets on this track. Kind of pales in comparison to what the rest of the album had to offer previously. Add to that, I do feel like that they have a lot of room to improve when it comes to lyrics and fleshing out a concept. I do definitely think that with the next album, assuming that there is the possibility that there will be a new N.E.R.D album in the future, they just focus more on writing lyrics because they are hitting the right mark here. This sort of socio-political record that is also kind of self-aware of the fragility of the mind of humans. This sort of woke rave kind of music with a funky and hip-hop atmosphere that I definitely dig a lot. I can definitely find a lot of avenues for poetry and great lyrics if they just kind of focus more on that with the next record, because I have no issues with the production. I mean, yeah, there's a couple of tracks that I don't care all that much for in comparison to the rest of the album, but even those tracks are really good. Even those tracks are well executed. I have no issues with the production. They can just keep doing what they're doing for all I care. But the next album, I do think that they need to keep improving and kind of reevaluate and redraft lyrics and all that, because I definitely like what they're going for with the whole concept that they seem to hit on, even if the concept isn't 100% there. But other than that, yeah, I definitely dig this album a lot. I think this was definitely a highlight for 2017. Pharrell had a moment to remind people what an N.E.R.D. album is going to have in store for the listener. Had a chance to make me interested in what N.E.R.D. are going to be doing, and have done, and succeeded, and I definitely commend Pharrell and the Neptunes for that. So if you are looking for a funky, electronic, hip-hop album that definitely has a lot to say lyrically, even if it's not like super deep, if you're looking for a lot of great production, if you're looking for a lot of intricate instrumentals, then definitely give this album a try. This album is a plus 2.4 and a plus 3. Apart from lyrical moments and a couple tracks that I personally wasn't all that crazy about, this was really great, and I definitely am interested in what they're going to be doing next, provided that they keep being N.E.R.D. I hope that this isn't just a one-off thing and they're going to go silent for another almost a decade, because this is a great album, and I think that if they keep making albums in this vein, if they keep making albums this intricate, then they're going to be doing a lot of interesting and well-noted things for music from the time to come. But if you give this album a listen, what'd you think of it? Did you like this album? Did you dislike this album? What was your reasoning for that, and what you consider listening to and reviewing next? This is CW Music here, signing off.